curiosity is a strength. I want to talk about the nature of what it is we often feel like we are when we're losing control of our own abilities to do the work that others want us to do, correct? Many of us are feeling lost and confused. It can happen to the best of us. When you go through a process such as soul enlightenment, spiritual enlightenment, or soul embodiment, it can feel disfiguring a little bit. You feel like you're out of whack. What it is that there's a time and a place for people to start revealing the sources of those souls, right? That are highlighting who we are. We're not here to tell people their private stories, is what some would say. But others are saying it helps to reassure me that my life isn't off track, or that I'm not alone on my journey. And so this is why some of us come forth with the vision of I'm being honest with people by saying it doesn't have to be a journey of pain and discomfort and excruciating terror. Even for those of us who've had our moments of it, we understand later why it is we created that kind of vision. When we focus on those who try to tear us down based on identities of who we are, it can be traumatic. So if I identify as some identity or some attribute that I have, and I see someone else tearing that identification down in their minds, right? It's a reinforcement of the idea in my own mind or in someone else's that we are not up to snuff. Okay? We are ladled with love, right? Others will say layered with love. But basically, it's that idea of what we're putting into our hearts is what we want to see for others. So if I'm telling people I'm helping to leveling the playing field or to level the playing field on a soul level, it's because I know how to do it without attracting most people who feel like they have to defend themselves against the nature of wisdom versus I'm embodied by my own soul's wisdom. Okay? That's the nature of all of us. We all have our wisdom on board. It's about what level of understanding we're going to attract to us. So those are those ideas of those who say, I'm looking outside of who I am to receive my wisdom. We all do. We're all looking around us, right? For the most part, or sensing us for those who are not physically seeing, but we are utilizing our bodies in various ways to pursue the vision of what loving is, okay? And when we do that, it's giving us hints about what we're bringing into our world. Do we want to focus on those who are labeling others as fat instead of skinny, right? I have people in my heart who are saying this is such a joke, right? I have people who get hurt because they're constantly being told that they're too skinny or just skinny when they are in the vision of, I don't feel healthy. I also have people, including myself, who've gone through adjustments in body image. And to hear those visions being lobbed at you from unknown sources, it's a testing of those who would say, I'm testing your resilience to the outside world. I had to go through that, but it's not something that most people need to do. Okay? So I'm being honest with that. I can feel good and beautiful in my body, but if I have other people tearing me down, what does that say about them? They have some sort of either satisfaction or they have built up the defensives on their own to be able to handle that kind of vision. This is when Brenda will usually say, I can either react right? I don't do it with people. I dismiss people almost instantly who are tearing other people down like that. Why? Because it shows me where they are. They haven't figured it out yet. What is really going to bring about the changes in the world that we want to see, right? Because that's the nature of the highest level. We're visual representations of each other in various states. That's that high level of love that people are having a hard time adjusting to. It is not easy to do that work. What we then understand is that to have a better experience of our life here, we can say, I would like to honor all of those that I've ever hurt with my wisdom, right? I'm going to have to hurt some people with my wisdom if it is related to concepts or things that people have identified with, rather than those things that they actually are, which is something that I have continually told people. Your own soul does not come at you with the vision of you are a blank or n blank, if it's like something, negative. Once you go to the guidance of I'm guiding others, you have to learn how to work that magic and say, I love who I am always. I can understand if that soul is watching that says, oh my gosh, that was so sad for you. You had to experience the negative. I went outside of my own soul, correct? No, I'm bringing through guidance for others, and sometimes it is a projection of negativity that in that vibration that I was in. You see, I had an emotional reaction yesterday, and then that aspect kind of came back to me in a different form. Okay? But what I want people to see is that when we work with our minds, it can be a traumatic experience for many. But that's not the only way to be. We can work our magic, allow for others to have their own sense of comfort in the idea that I know what you're going through, I can handle the wisdom. I know what you're going through, I can handle your thoughts. I understand if I were you, I would be feeling the same way too. However, when you get to a certain point, as I did, where one of my tragic gifts that others will never want to experience, right? No, it is basically the understanding of how to look at something or somebody, give them a perspective that might alter their own perspective just enough where they can see that their own limitations are being projected out onto others. I'm projecting to you that you're not as beautiful as what I would prefer, right? That's what some people do, right? We have those natural characteristics that people are attracted to or whatnot. But to label people this, that, or whatnot, or to try to tear people down psychologically, Brenda knows how to do that. She's the brainchild of that vision, basically, and she says, I won't do that for the most part. I've had my hat handed to me for doing that with certain souls in my past, and I will do it on a soul level if and when it is needed, based on the idea of, did I invite this soul into my life to show me a lesson about who I am? And that is when Brenda says, now you get to see who I really am. And that's when people start to clap, because they understand that sometimes if we are the innocents walking around this world and others are saying, you get out of the situations that you are in, that's true. You get out of the situations, but we are saying when we have people who are still dealing with the dynamics of my family is in flux because they don't understand the nature of, say, divorce or separation on a soul level. That's a tricky one for some of us to deal with, depending on what's being played out and for whom. I've had to deal with in-laws on the soul level who are more honest and caring and loving in their vibration now than they were when they were here. And it hurts to hear the loving words, right? But sometimes it's the honesty of where they were and what they experienced with me that gave me the goosebumps, right? No, my future comes to me. And for the most part, I'm almost done with working with just about everyone in my family and my friends. There's still one friend that will always be disconnected from me in her mind, but our hearts still connect pretty well for the most part on the soul level. Okay, we don't wish each other ill will. We just want each other to be free from each other because of how tumultuous the endings were. Brenda basically locked down and loaded everything up and said, it's time for us to disengage. Okay, so let's get back to the nature of curiosity. When you're going through this process, it's okay to be curious about where am I going, right? And this is that sense of adventure rather than the fear of the unknown or that fear that I'm lost. Brenda knows how to always find her way back to her center, to her own soul. She hears it often. And she knows it from the visions of other souls who are trying to come through to guide me in different ways, to show me their own paths of discovery or whatnot. I entertain a lot of souls from the other side of the veil, but I also hurt some in my mind sometimes because I'm not ready to hear their wisdom. Okay, that's part of that program, and it's the progress, not perfection, that I work with. I'm not here to serve anybody some perfected message that's been scripted and, dialogued for others. I'm here to be truthful about the pain that sometimes we run into when we stick our nose into somebody else's business, right? It depends on how we use curiosity. For me, curiosity can often be, I'm going to go into this relationship with a sense of adventure. If I can do that, I'll probably land on my feet. If I go in feeling nervous or fruitful in that idea that I'm always going to get something out of it rather than putting in half the effort, right? When we go into a relationship, we have to realize that we're half of the puzzle. And when one of us is taking on so much of the emotional burden of soul, it can be a backlog of souls that say, oh my gosh, I'm going to stick up for you. I was taking on the backlog of soul vision for those who said, I need you to hear what I need to hear so I can move forward and be free and clear of all of us who are now moving forward in our journey and not needing to have redemptive souls coming to us all the time. That's where a lot of people go when they see mediums, okay? And that's another sense of adventure and curiosity. But to be truly curious about someone is to be open to the exploration of who they are without the judgment, if at all possible. And that is something that most people are going to say, we do that automatically. We are constantly making judgments. But it's about whether or not I'm going to judge somebody as negative or how I'm going to look at them in the mirror, right? When people look at themselves in the mirror, if they're saying, I'm curious as to who I am, that's what you get first and foremost when you align with your own soul. And sometimes it's not as easy as what we think because we assume we're all that here. But there's more of us that we're bringing to us. It could be the strengths that we developed in other lifetimes or in other realities, believe it or not. It could be weaknesses that we have to be aware of. But this isn't about telling people that it's something that they have to wait for until they cross over to access. I have love on my mind for the most part. I'm a romantic in my heart as well. Okay, it's in my mind. So I love to feel that vision of it. And so I'm curious about people. This is my strength. I'm curious about people. But it also has to be from a place of, depending on where I am in my level of worth, those words can either hit me or love me, depending on what level of love I'm serving up to those around me. Am I hurting people with my thoughts? Now, this is what many people start to wonder. And they go, oh, I've heard that before. They keep saying, let's be mindful about our thoughts. Brenda said, forget it. I'm tired of walking on eggshells. If I have someone coming into my vision on a soul level, I'm not going to be their, quote, punching bag. If they have an issue with me, that's fine. But they would also understand I get the same respect that they themselves give me, right? So, or I give it. So sometimes that's the nature of the lack of respect, is it's granted to some. They're going to feel like they're not respected because, in essence, if they're still bogged down in the idea that facts don't matter on certain planes, then yeah, they're going to have some hard times ahead. And I want anyone who is constantly saying to themselves, this is fake, 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 to understand that you are misguided in certain ways only, but your own soul will guide you to the truth of who you are. We don't come here to disillusion ourselves even more. It's showing us what we're afraid of most often. And if we're afraid to align with those who are honest and deceptive at the same time, right? No, this is about being curious. Brenda will go in and challenge herself with those souls that she disagrees with in various ways. I don't disagree with someone as they are. It might be, oh, this is interesting, right? Let me see, where are they at? Is this a valid way to look at the world? This is where people will start to get an understanding. And when she says valid, she doesn't mean that it's all good in the eyes of soul, right? No, souls are starting to come through and say, no, I can't have my family member going, half-cocked onto another realm, sitting there loading up shotguns, trying to take down people for no reason. Okay, that's why Brenda was getting some of those hard-hitting messages of the future coming to her in the form of school shootings and whatnot. She still gets them, but they're various words of terrorism, okay? And so she's able to handle those heavy hitters because they are. They know that they come with strong personalities often. Others are just very detrimental to the nature of what curiosity is. They lost hope for the most part. So you see, when we talk about who are we curious about, think about who you focus on. We tend to focus on those that shock us as well. So some people are here to put shock into the system. Brenda went through shock on a soul level, and she was honored for it, for doing that work, by the way. It literally kicked her to the curb in the minds of many, but they understand it, okay? It's not about saying that your life has to be filled with shock and awe, but she was part of it. She was fascinated with news and the discovery of other cultures and other women and other men and whatnot. But what happens is when people are putting on a mask on the internet, or they're flying their freak flags out there saying, I can just say and be whoever I want to be, but in reality, they come through as very kind and gentle in person. That's where a lot of people are. We see the differences now. People are starting to pay attention. What do you mean the freak flag? They are literally coming unglued on social media. Brenda watches social media sometimes and she's like, oh, I could undo so much of this stuff. She's honest. I'll say 99% of it is unnecessary. I honor the freedom of speech, But to be honest, I wouldn't say 99% because everyone is connecting in their own beautiful ways. But when it comes to the nature of the news and what's happening and why, most people have zero clue about what's happening and why it's happening and what it's leading to. Big changes are afoot, and if you want to know what they are, some people will not have a good time in the next 10 years. It's probably about 8 years now. Because their whole soul is going to be coming at them with the reality of what we're still dealing with here in this world, right? Fascism undone. Are we curious about those who want to learn about those who were claiming they were fascists, like Stalin, Joseph Stalin, perhaps? I have to hear from these souls that identified as these, controlled victims, is what he would say. He would claim he was the victim in his mind, and that was why the controlling aspect of it was so incredibly strong. Now, his soul is partway there, partway in another field of vision. We don't need to bring through those who have mutilated and killed millions, right? But what we're seeing are those aspects of those souls who think that that's the way to be in order to get their vision brought across. Okay. That's why those souls who want to talk about what it is to see the negative in people versus Brenda's idea when she goes to people in her own soul are saying, I'll find the best for you and your soul, right? Your soul comes through with the best information for you. It wants to be released. And that's what people are saying. There is a lot of repressed emotions, correct? Not even close. The repression of the emotions is why people are being told from psychology, let it out, get it out there so the world can see what we're working on. And then we can free ourselves from the anger. You've just created a collateral damage and probably a drama triangle with so many people who are now going, I know I was told I needed anger management. It's not about saying that the anger is bad. It's how you handle the anger for the most part. And others are just really, I keep hearing half-cocked. That means that there are so many souls who are so in their wisdom of my gun is my savior. It's the energy imprint of the gun that is bringing them the terror in which they vibrate, whether or not they realize it's a subconscious message that they are often sending themselves, not those who are of hunting and whatnot in, sporting associations. But those who are working with it don't realize they are working with several vibrations when they own and carry weapons. They are basically sending a message of, I'm scared to death of who I am. They're afraid of fear itself. So what they say is, I'm aligning with the vision of freeing myself from fear by instilling it in others. And yet, that's exactly who they are on the inside. Do you not see how it's actually the opposite, where they themselves now realize they didn't free themselves from the fear? They just transferred it to others, is what they're thinking. But it's still subconsciously their fear that they're working with. Okay. And many are going to clap for that one. That's the beauty of her soul, to say, let's work with the reality of what's going on. And the souls will say, we love you for it, though, because in essence, it shows us where you are and where we are as a society or as a couple. It could be anybody, right? Different people have different ideas about what they want to see in the relationships. So if you can stay curious and open to the adventure, then it becomes more like a story of who we are rather than the reality, right? This isn't belittling people who've had gun violence brought into their lives in various ways, okay? it is an understanding of those souls who are not aware of what they are actually creating with either the tools that they're using, the weapons that they're utilizing, the attitudes they are holding towards certain people, the witnessing of various events on TV or on the screen. And what does that do for them? Does it allow for them to be free to be who they need to be? Okay? And that's why people are saying, this is my freedom. And we would say, your freedom is locked and loaded in your subconscious. You haven't freed yourself from anything at that point. The freedom from fear means you wouldn't be creating with it by needing to have something to fear from, because you're sending a message to others. And we understand there are like professors of psychology who are saying this is a psychological understanding. It's not. It's a vibrational frequency of what a weapon is and what happens on a soul level. Okay, and there is a psychological component to it, but it's more than that. It's the energy release that others are saying, but it helps me feel safe in my neighborhood or whatnot. That's why we're not disarming the whole country. Right? This isn't about saying we have to take away everyone's weapon, or we have to stop, the sporting competitions, or hunting is a different topic altogether when you go to the level of soul. It depends on what level of soul you're talking about. Brenda knows that vision very well, but it is not being demeaned by anyone, okay? It is a heart-centered soul that she works with that loves her and says she's filing cabinets of paper. So this is about the nature of trying to get people more curious about who we are ourselves and curious about our lives and others. And if you can do that, then you might get a more sense of, oh, it's not that I'm lost, I'm just on this journey. And so instead of being fearful, I'll remain curious about what I'm bringing to me. Hopeful is another word that many would use. Okay, I'm hopeful for many people when they open up to the nature of what the love of all really is. It doesn't mean I demean you in my mind. I have my moments of it. It's more of a unwinding that I often do because it's a reflection of my gifts to show others where they themselves are if they are in projection mode towards me of something that they think is about lowering my self-worth or raising me up. But in essence, I say I don't need outside validation from anyone in order to be the beauty of who I am. It's always nice to hear nice words, okay? But in essence, there's a very strong, they would say an addictive medicine, which is that idea of I am, that many will understand. And so when you come to the I am, it's a very strong vibration that I already vibrate in. And so then when we move into the we are, which is what I claim, I know how to do that vibration, but it's an even more difficult vibration to find yourself in. If you're working with people who are all different vibrations and frequencies and whatnot, because they all want to have a say from their point of view, which doesn't resonate with a lot of people. That's where I'm at in many ways. Most people don't want to resonate with the idea of I need to watch my words or I need to repress my thoughts, right? This is why we have so many people just going off half-cocked around this world. Okay? People are in reaction mode 24/7 in this country with what it is that they think needs to be done in order to have a more calm and peaceful atmosphere, right? Some are just in the joy of causing chaos, and they need to understand that that's what they're working with. Okay, the chaos of soul. I can feel it. around me. And it is traumatic sometimes, and sometimes it's just dramatic. And I'll say, oh, this is just more drama. And sometimes I can sit back and watch the drama and be entertained by it. And other times I'm like, oh, this is starting to affect me, so I need to back away. Okay? So remember, that curiosity is a strength. If you can hold that vibration of, I'm curious about this other person, but I'm not going to entertain them as like my best friend. Okay? Stay curious about who you are for the most part. Be open to who you are. Be open to exploring yourself. Your soul knows who you are always, so you can always, get on a path that is a better path for you. You have to be able to look in and say, what's actually going on and why? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And sometimes you might not know that, but if you do know that, then take the step that helps you go in a different direction. It's the right direction. Others are saying, oh, the right direction. Others will not understand what the right direction is, because if it doesn't align with their conditioned values, they think it's wrong. Versus Brenda's idea is, I take off most identities, almost all, so that I can be free to be me without aligning with people who are conditioned to think that the value identity is somehow the way to be for me, right? Or if I identify as soul, people have these ideas about what that means. Okay, for instance, when I'm creating my products, the idea was like, who is your audience? And I had to I was tapping in because I know, and I was writing it out, and then I got another perspective that shot in and said, and those looking for salvation, right? That's a joke for me, because I'm like, no, that is definitely not. And it's not because it's known that I don't do that idea of looking outside of ourselves and worshiping another as higher than who we are, versus higher levels of wisdom. Okay. And I definitely don't feel like I owe anybody anything at this point in time. So I had to laugh at that. But that's just, it's not that it's bad. It's just, it's someone else's path, right? It's a different, path of philosophy is what I got told. The words of old is kind of like philosophy in a way. It can be, though. My soul called it religious inspiration. That's not my path. And so it's not my forte. And it's really not something people want me to talk about for the most part, because it's just not as fun for me versus those who say, you're not the way that I need you to be, right? I've had people who claim they need to hear from Jesus. And my whole vision is, that's a beautiful thought and exercise for people to go to that place. But when it comes to the day-to-day living, your soul is going to give you an absolutely fabulous representation of who you are, where you are, how you got there, why you're there, and another path that you may take, or other ideas about what will enhance your journey from a place of, I want to have a better experience of this plane. So that's where I ride. That idea that most of us want to have a better experience on this plane, we're not just trying to make it to some other destination once we cross over. And I'm not belittling it, okay? Because I know how to travel in the dream state to various planes, and I'm obviously connected here. But with that, I want people to understand it's not always easy doing what I do. I honor your victimhood if you think that there's something wrong with me, because I don't always stay on topic. I was hearing from various souls about different topics. And so the topic that came out this morning wasn't necessarily the strength of it, but it's the honesty of it, that it really does open you up to a whole different avenue of inspection. Others will say deception. They wanted to hear about what can I utilize curiosity for versus am I going to get penalized if I'm not. That's not it at all. You don't have to be curious. It's just one of many strengths. It's a way of opening up yourself to potentials that you might have shut yourself off from. Okay? Stay curious, wise, and soulful. That's the tagline, right? For me, that was what was given to me by my own soul. So that's why sometimes those titles are there for a reason, not just for me, but it's a reinforcement of that idea of if I'm closing myself off to others as well. And sometimes it's a good thing I do. Okay, we have to understand, we're not here to sit there and serve everybody. Brenda's had to deal with some hard-hitting souls that claim she's of the devil and all of that kind of stuff, which we already know that's going out. It's mostly going to be in the subconscious. Most people don't create with that 24/7, and it's a projection from long ago for the most part. But anyways, with that, I want to say thank you for watching. And remember, as always, stay curious, wise, and soulful. Have a wonderful day.